The film begins in the bedroom of a woman who recently overdosed on drugs. Her young daughter walked into her room and saw her mother's body lying in a mess. Currently, Rose Cotter is a therapist going about her day at work. The patient she treats is a manic named Carl. In his constant muttering, he says that people are dying and that he is going to die too. He is comforted by Rose, but he continues to have episodes despite her efforts. Then Ross got a call with a young woman, Laura Weaver. When Rose met her, Laura was distressed by a recent incident in which she witnessed her professor kill herself with a big stick. Since then, Laura claims to have seen an evil being in the form of other people. Back turning away from Ross, looking back, Laura began to panic. Rose called for help, but she looked back to see Laura picking up a broken piece from the vase, now smiling uncomfortably. Rose is shocked when Laura slits her throat before rescue arrives. Rose spoke to 2 detectives, one of whom was her ex-Joel, for details of the incident. She explained what she saw and spoke with her boss, Dr. Morgan Desai. Rose later went to the home she shares with fiance Trevor and their cat Mustache. Ross and Trevor go to Ross's for dinner sister Holly and her husband Greg, but Rose was deeply traumatized by Laura's suicide, lashing out at Holly when she blamed Rose for forgetting Holly's son Jackson's upcoming birthday. Ross tries to get back to work and move on. She got a call from Holly, who asked Ross to give Jackson at least one birthday present, as they both apologized for the altercation. As they talked, Ross looked out the window and seemed to see what looked like Laura in the distance. When Ross passes by in Carl's room, he is seen with a disturbing smile like Laura and starts telling Rose repeatedly, "You're going to die." She calls for help and Carl is stopped by the orderly. When Rose goes to buy Jackson a present, she sees Laura's apparition again, still grinning. At home, she couldn't find a mustache and was startled when the security alarm went off. She gets a call from the security company, but it turns out it's a malicious entity mocking Rose. Ross went to Jackson's birthday party this weekend. When it's time to deliver a gift, he'll take Ross, which should be a toy train. Instead, Jackson opened the box and found Moustache's body. Everyone freaks out and Rose tries to reassure everyone she didn't, but she saw that the other mother had what seemed to be a physical evil smile. Rose stumbled back and fell off a glass table, seriously injuring her arm. Ross was taken to the hospital for treatment. Morgan visited her after learning of her incident and advised her to take time off. When Trevor takes her home, Rose tries to explain herself, but he thinks she's crazy and she literally killed Mustache. Rose is too meeting with her own therapist, Dr. Madeline Northcott, who helped her through the trauma of her mother's suicide. Ross starts doing some research. She played the recorded audio of her session with Laura and heard what sounded like faint breathing. She also tracked down Laura's professor, Gabriel Munoz, and tracked down his widow, Victoria. She told Ross that Gabriel claimed to have seen just days after he witnessed the suicide of another woman named Anna Powell. Something was bothering him. When Rose claimed she was going through what Gabriel did, Victoria thought Rose was laughing at her tragedy and ordered her to leave. Despite Joel's initial reluctance, Ross visits Joel for help. He looked up at Anna Powell and saw that she had died by gouging out her eyes. It was also reported that Anna also saw a man commit suicide, which was shown in security footage at the gas station, who was seen with the before he impaled himself in front of Anna. He gave a creepy smile. When Rose got home, she found that Trevor had called Madeleine to make a home visit because they were worried about Rose's mental state. Ross snapped at Trevor that he cared more about how she would make him look, which led her to rush out and break up with him. Ross also visits Holly and tries to explain her birthday, but Holly won't forgive Ross and says she's circling like their mother. Ross shot back that Holly never tried to accompany their mother and she had to take care of her until the end. Rose back in the car, Holly appears to be seen walking back to her, but that's just the entity that haunts her. Joel escorts Rose to prison, where she meets the only survivor of the curse of Robert Talley. He told Ross that the entity targeted itself to people's trauma and spread itself to new victims. Every victim witnesses suicide. They become the next victim. So Robert kills one to prevent the entity from killing him. When Ross told him she couldn't kill anyone, Robert was horrified and believed that Ross had brought the entity with him to force him into restraint. Ross returns home and tries to talk to Madeleine, seeing herself at home. It turns out that this is the entity in disguise, as Madeleine actually calls her later. Madeleine's entity grinned at her, saying that Rose's time was coming. Worried that she had no choice, Rose drove to work with a knife. She walks into the building and finds Carl's room, where she freaks him out. Morgan runs in and sees Ross stabbing Carl repeatedly. He screams like he's about to tear his face off, but it's just a nightmare Rose passed out in her car. When Morgan saw her and the knife in her car, she drove away. Ross called Joel and told him she had to isolate herself to stop the spread of the entity to others. She drove back to her childhood home where her mother died. At dark, this entity appears to Ross to be a tall, long-haired monster version of her mother, Always Smile. Ross expressed her anger at her mother for behaving so badly because she was sick and she never got the help she needed. The entity follows and taunts Rose until she sets it on fire and runs out of the house as it burns. She then went to Joel's apartment, claiming she finally got rid of it. Then Joel tells her she'll never be able to get rid of it. He gives a creepy smile. Ross is dreaming again. She is still at home. The entity found her and tore off its face, then opened Rose's jaw and crawled into her mouth. Joel appears and enters the house, only to find Ross dousing himself with kerosene. She turns and flashes her own creepy smiling. She ignited herself in front of a terrified Joel.